Hi, I'm Rachel Daly, Visual Arts Program Director at Artistry. On behalf of Artistry staff and its Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you to the 44th Annual Members Juried Art Exhibition.
Hello, my name is Nicole Watson, and I am the director of the Catherine G. Murphy Gallery at St. Catherine University, and I am thrilled to be this year's juror for the Member Show here at Artistry. I want to thank Rachel Daly and Artistry for inviting me to be this year's juror. It has been such an enjoyable experience, especially when we're living in a time when not many art spaces are open and available for viewing. My approach to this year's exhibition was to think of the artwork mainly in context of things that are sort of happening in the world around us, right? The pandemic, a lot of deep reflection, I think, in our community about social justice. The great thing about the members here at Artistry is they are making fantastic work in a variety of different mediums and thinking about a lot of different things, which makes for a really rich and engaging and thoughtful show. So the first honorable mention award I'll give is for a piece called Grassland by John Pearson. And this is a polymer photogravure intaglio print. What drew me to this piece is sort of its quiet intimacy. I think it really beckons the viewer to come in for a closer look. And as you get closer, you see that it's a series of images of grasses, but they're very intentionally composed in relationship to one another. So you start to see these wonderful organic lines sort of meeting one another, swaying through the middle of the piece. It's a very contemplative piece of work, which I really appreciate in these times that feel a little unstable for a lot of us. So that's one of the things that I appreciate most about this particular work. And a very skillful combination of processes and techniques. I think the artist did a really fine job of bringing those things together in a really nuanced composition. The next honorable mention I'd like to talk about is this untitled painting by Zamira Kuyen. I love the graphic quality of this piece, and clearly the artist has a really skillful understanding of color relationships. I also really appreciate that I can sense that there's a narrative quality to this image, a story behind it that I don't necessarily know, but it makes me really intrigued to talk to the artist and to learn more about the image. There is a really lovely sort of sense of light in this piece as well. The next honorable mention I'll talk about is this sculpture made of wood by George Moore. It's titled Quarantined Again. And the thing I really respond to in this sculpture is this sense of weight and physicality, but also this like really elegant gesture of the back kind of curving down to the pedestal. It has this very grounding effect for me, and I love the title. I love the sense of sort of introspection and kind of like tucking in which is something we were all doing during quarantine. So I really appreciate this artist's response to the time we're living in. I gave Denise Bunker's painting Day Along 9 Mile Creek an honorable mention. I really respond to the layers of light and color in this painting. Personally, I'm particularly fond of landscape work, and I really appreciate the way the artist created a sense of depth in this particular image. The treatment of the water is especially strong, with these really painterly brush strokes and this sort of heightened, charged use of color. I gave a merit award to Rita Bayer Corrigan's painting called Superior Surge. I love the sort of loose brushwork in this painting. I think it's really challenging for artists to sort of know when to stop so that something doesn't get sort of overly painted or stiff, and I think this artist was especially successful at that. I love the sense of spray coming up over the rocks. And I really appreciate the way that she has taken the landscape and pushed it into more of this abstract composition. I gave a merit award to Heidi Nelson's painting titled The Yellow Room, which of course is a space in the Guthrie, which I'm familiar with and have visited before. I really appreciate the limited palette of this painting, which certainly reflects my experience of this space, but I think also allows us to pay really close attention to the artist's very skillful rendering of the space, where there is unusual light, there is a lot of reflection, there are a lot of things sort of competing for our eyes and our attention. But I think she does a really nice job of creating depth and perspective. And I really appreciate the figure in the space, which gives us a sense of scale. So overall, just a really masterful painting of this particular place. I gave a merit award to Peter Wong's photograph titled Shirley and the One Room Schoolhouse. I really appreciate Peter's use of light and dark in this composition. It's amazing how rich the dark areas are and how sharp the light areas are. I also appreciate the way that the artist has created this really nice but sort of gentle movement from foreground to background. I also sense that the artist is telling a story here as well, and while I don't know the subject nor do I know the story, these parts make it really compelling to me as an image. And I really like the texture of the grass, the subject's shirt against sort of the softness of the schoolhouse in the background. I gave a merit award to Shelley Hull's piece titled Wake Up Down Under. I really respond to the artist's use of sort of the underdrawing of this piece and how it stands in contrast to the more developed and finished areas of the background. I think you get a nice sense of the gesture of the human form that way. So it's kind of this these raw areas in the center work really nicely with the more finished elements of the background. I can tell that the artist was very intentional about areas of the background, especially in the application of line and detail. And I really commend the artist for the decision-making process that way. I like the use of this strong pink kind of along with these softer greens and the introduction of pattern. Overall, just a really unique piece and compelling to me, something unusual I haven't seen a lot of recently. So it's joyful and I think a little playful at the same time. Overall, really just wonderful to look at. I gave the Excellence in 2D Award to Pamela Carberry for her piece Light Patterns Moonrise. I really appreciate the way the simplicity of the horizon line in contrast to the more detailed portion of the water beneath. The use of a very sort of shimmery ink and its gradation from the top down is really inviting to me. I also appreciate the amount of movement and energy that's present in the watery area below. There's also these really nice hints of the reflection of the moon on the water. There's something very meditative to me about this piece, and I really respond to the sort of contrast between the simplicity of the top quarter of the piece and this much more textured sort of rhythmic element of the lower part of the image. I gave an Excellence in 3D Award to this piece titled Sunny Disposition by Juried. I really appreciate the use of form in this piece, repetition in the form, and the way that it sort of curls out and curls back in at the same time. It really reminds me of flowers unfolding, of plants growing, of thinking about seaweed sort of undulating in the ocean. So it has a lot of movement and energy to it. I also really just appreciate its playful color, this really nice sort of push and pull I think that's happening, kind of pulling in and pushing out. That certainly comes from both the slight variation in color throughout the piece, as well as its composition. I gave Best in Show to Leah Yellowbird's piece titled Makwa. I love this piece. I think it has this fantastic energy to it. The composition is very well done. Of course, we're looking at the image of a bear, and it seems to be a very fierce bear, but it gives off this sense of, to me anyways, power and strength. And I love that this sort of ferociousness of this animal, or kind of perceived ferociousness of this animal, is in contrast to this very delicate application of paint. And I think that's even heightened even more by the use of floral and plant imagery to create the contours of the bear and the sort of the adornment of the bear. I also am really impressed by just the precision of the technique, the way it's sort of a pointillist technique. It's inviting up close, but as you stand back, it really holds up well as a composition. I'm really excited to see more work by this artist.
We want to acknowledge and thank all the members who entered their work to be juried this year. knowing how challenging it is to put your work forward for others to critique. Special thanks to our retail sponsor, Wet Paint, for their contribution of gift certificates for the Honorable Mention Awards. I'd like to thank our volunteers who assisted with this exhibition, Mary Jo McMahon, Mary Ann Roloff, and Ann Geister. For gallery hours and a virtual catalog, please visit our website at artistrymn.org.